Shelby, get in. It's time for a house call.
Where are we headed, Renata?
Let me tell you on the way. Think of it like a prairie.
I said I wanted to release control.
I know.
But then I was like, but you must bend to my will.
Frustrated and dejected. That's how many modern Midwest gardeners are growing to feel because of our inclement temperatures, severe storms, pest pressure, droughty conditions, and heavy soils. Tending a quaffed landscape of traditional flowers and shrubberies starts to feel counterintuitive, tedious, and costly. And one starts to wonder, why am I growing a hydrangea that requires soil amendments and daily irrigation when I could be growing the plants that survived on the plains long before I arrived on the scene? That was exactly Shelley's train of thought when she had a landscape crew come to rip out her house's front landscape in preparation for a native prairie-scape. Looking to get in touch with the plants that make the tallgrass prairie one of the most remarkable biomes in the world, all she needs are the plants and the know-how to establish them. That's where I enter the scene in the case of the prairie plant installation.
In the florist world back in the 1900s, when some more exotic things started coming in past carnations and roses, it was just one of my favorites to stick in an arrangement because that color of purple is actually like a neutral. You can put it with anything and it just brightens it. And then when I found out it was just growing out in Kansas, it's like, what?
I know.
This is awesome.
I feel like when I walk out my front door, I just see the prairie. And so is this something that a lot of times, like people who live in town really enjoy, so they get some of that outside feel to their homes?
I definitely think that a majority of Kansans don't get to walk out their front door every day and see the Flint Hills Prairie like you and I do. And so Shelley hasn't even set foot in a prairie. And I didn't know this about her, but she wants to bring that feeling that you and I have to her front door. Hey, Shelley, how's it going?
It's going great.
So I'm here with a car full of natives.
Let's go.
You ready? Okay,
ready.
Let's go check it out. Here's what you need to know about Shelley. She's a lifelong gardener and has dabbled in all aspects of horticulture, but she specifically has a background in floristry. So she definitely has a design eye for colors and textures.
The thing I want about this bed is for it to look good as you walk up to the front and when you look out the window. So tallest thing's in the middle.
Besides having a floristry background, she's also worked in her yards at her homes that she's lived at throughout her life. In fact, she had a really hard time leaving her last home because of the yard she had built up.
So leaving what I built at the last place over 30 years was kind of tough.
Shelley was feeling kind of lackluster about her current home's front landscaping because she inherited it and it was hard to maintain.
It probably was 30 or 40 years old. The plantings probably looked amazing when they were first put in, but some were gone, some were overgrown, and it just got to be where I couldn't maintain it.
Yeah.
And it was not a good first impression.
And yeah, we're referring to this landscaping in the past tense because Shelley recently hired a landscape crew to come in and tear out all of these plants and install rock beds across the whole front of her house. And one of the things they removed was a 30-foot tall juniper tree.
That was like 2 feet away from the house.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a problem.
Yeah.
It had to go, but it did supply a lot of shade and a lot of habitat.
So she's looking for a new habitat and one with lots of added benefit.
First off, water, and it makes the most sense to plant what should be here. If I hadn't come along or the people before me hadn't come along and disturbed it, what would be here? And I love the look of wildflowers, and I don't get to go hiking as much as I'd like to. I don't get to go to Colorado as much as I'd like to. And even though a lot of this rock isn't native Kansas rock, it does give me that feeling of being outdoors when you can't get there.
On that note, why don't we head outdoors, specifically outside Shelley's front door? I did drive with the prairie in the back of the car.
I am so excited. Oh, I got to contain myself. These are beautiful.
I'm glad you think so.
Oh, you want it on video?
I unloaded my prairie onto your yard here. And I want to talk a little bit about your space here as well as plant selection. But let's first talk about your beds, okay? So we lay the groundwork.
Okay.
So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 individual beds that are surrounded with these rocks. I have since learned they're called honeycomb limestone.
They kind of look like Swiss cheese rocks.
Yeah, that's pretty much what they look like. And in these rocks, Chele actually inherited some native plant material, some wild plants that just came with the rocks to her beds. And she wanted me to identify what was growing in them before we even got started with planting the natives that I brought with me.
So that I thought was really cool. And is that native?
This is a retrain, yeah, it is native. Fleabane is its common name. I love how our native plants often have these like witchy names to them. They sound like they're ingredients for like a witch's brew, you know? I mean, fleabane.
I'm surprised you haven't made a witch's brew from them.
I'm not a witch.
Well, I don't think
How dare you?
I could just see you making something with them.
I believe in modern medicine.
It's kind of pedestrian, I guess. I don't know. I see it all over.
Yeah, it is. It's common, but you know, one thing about native plants is they are going to be
And that's a good thing.
native, like they're going to be what you see.
My problem is that so many people over my life have told me that's a weed, but I do really like it.
Know. Native plants kind of have a bad rap for being considered aggressive and invasive.
Why are they considered aggressive and invasive?
Because they spread like fire. Maybe not quite like fire, but they're aggressive spreaders. The invasive term is thrown around a little bit too easy in our quaffed ornamental horticulture world, because invasive implies that the plant's illegal. It implies that it is actually a non-native species that is competing with our native species for our resources. And even to the point that it's choking out our natives.
Right.
So I really hate the word invasive because it's not really appropriate. Now, aggressive is a more appropriate word.
How often does a word get used when it's not meant to be and actually confuse more people?
It happens all the time. So using the word invasive incorrectly is just such a huge pet peeve of mine. It's the worst diss that you can throw on a plant. And I'm offended on behalf of all prairie plants. So the thing about native plantings is you've got to go at them with a very intentional manner, because if you're planting native plants in, like true natives like these that I'm collecting the seeds straight off our Flint Hills prairie, and there's no genetic tampering being done with them aside from what nature has developed in these natives.
How are you collecting the seeds straight off the Flint Hills prairie?
So my family has a 6th-generation farm, and with that farm we have miles of rangeland and grassland. It used to be old oil field territory, but for the most part it's undisturbed except for cattle that we have grazing on it. So over the summer I go out and I collect seed, I observe the prairie. I'm also collecting stems for drying and selling on the bus later in the fall, but it's a big process. I spend a lot of time in the prairie every summer. These natives are going to fight for their lives because they've survived in the prairie longer than we've survived in the prairie. You've kind of got to go at it with the intention of this is going to be a native bed and that is what's going to be in it. I'm not going to be planting in ornamentals from the garden center in amongst them, because those are going to get choked out by the natives. The natives are going to be stronger and more aggressive growers than something that has been bred for 10 years by a breeder and then plant patented, and it's got this nice little American roundy moundy habit. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So natives work really well when you've got a nice big bed like we've got here stretched out in front of your house.
How big is big enough for natives?
You could have something as small as 4 feet across to 6 acres if you wanted to. But the whole idea is that you have a space that's defined, that you keep your natives contained within. And you can plant them in competition with one another, like they would be in the prairie.
They can duke it out.
Yeah, they can duke it out amongst themselves. Prepare yourself for this to be it's not going to be very tight. The planting is going to be very loose and free.
Cool.
So you mentioned how your retrain kind of spilled over.
Yeah.
If there was more plants in here, it wouldn't look so crazy that it had tipped over in the wind.
Do they compete enough to keep weeds out of it?
Not in the first couple of years. So there's definitely got to be some human intervention on that front, hence the culturing aspect of this native bed. But we'll get into that later. How are you feeling about the ideology of the planting? Like, how are you feeling about the fact that they're going to be kind of filling in and competing with each other.
I'm excited about
You're
that
excited
aspect,
about that
because I
aspect?
don't have to have control. I can relinquish control.
Okay. Yeah, so native planting is it's a big brain reset. The maintenance is still there, but it's very different. So instead of maintaining by like deadheading and fertilizing and watering all the time, your maintenance is going to be keeping your natives contained in their beds.
As we've been chatting more about maybe this native prairie spreading, do we have any concerns about the height of them?
Well, yeah, considering these are from the tallgrass prairie that can get like 8 feet tall in places, it's definitely something we want to think about if these are planting in front of windows. However, a lot of the wildflowers I brought are not very vegetative up in the top section of the plant. They're very basally oriented. You don't just have to think about your finished height and how they fill out with the natives. I also like to think a lot about their bloom time throughout the season. So I have selected in my line of plants everything from May bloomers all the way through October bloomers, because gotta have bloom time all year long. I think I brought, if I remember right, about 10 to 12 different species of natives here in front of us.
Renata, I feel like when I was watching you take all these out of your car, there were quite a few. More than 10 or 12.
Yeah, there was more like 19 different species. I kind of got out of control. Welcome to a native plant selection speed round. So I don't bog down listeners with the 19 species that I actually brought with me to Chele's house. I am going to give you their plant names followed by their color and one fun fact about each one in a very quick manner. If you would like to visualize these plants, head to my YouTube channel, Renata's Garden, for some bonus visual content. All right, let's go. Liatris punctata and Liatris aspera are two species otherwise known as blazing star or gay feather. They're bright purple and they bloom in September through October. Achillea millefolium is a white yarrow or western yarrow flowering almost all season long. Retibita columnifera or upright coneflower has yellow drop petals with cool, dissect fern-like leaves. Echinacea angustifolia is commonly confused for purple coneflower, but it has narrow leaves and a more narrow petal shape, but still purple. Vernonia baldwinii is a tough bloomer, blooming July to August, and it has this almost neon purple fuchsia color. Rudbeckia hirta is a black-eyed Susan, and most people can picture what that looks like, but if you're having trouble, it has a black eye in the center with yellow petals around. Heterotheca canescens is otherwise known as gray golden aster. It's an early blooming aster, and it has gold flowers with silver blue foliage. Burkelia eupatorioides is a white blooming shrubby kind of grower with a 17-foot deep root system. Thelosperma filifolium is a yellow disc-shaped flower kind of like coreopsis with lacy green foliage. Solidago missouriensis is a short goldenrod that super blooms in September alongside its cousins to help support our bees through winter. I also brought dahlia, otherwise known as prairie clover. Now don't picture your typical clover that grows in your lawn. Think like a coneflower without the drop petals. Instead, it has like a strip of petals or color around the head. I brought with me 4 species: Dahlia purpurea, which is purple, Dahlia candida, which is white, Dahlia multiflora, which has a round head and is also white, and Dahlia aurea, which is my favorite native, and it's yellow and fuzzy. Most of these bloom June into early July. Amorpha canescens, otherwise known as lead plant, has silver compound leaves with a June blooming dark purple flower spike. Salvia azurea is a September bloomer that has a striking sky blue color. Penstemon cobea, otherwise known as beard tongue because it has this protruding tongue-like structure out of each floret that has kind of like hairs on it, is pale pink to white with kind of these magenta specks on the inside of each floret. Delphinium carolinianum is the most fairy-like white flower spike that dots the prairie in May. And that's a wrap on the plant selection that I brought for Chele and her yard. Don't forget to go check out my YouTube if you want to see video content of each native.
So why no grasses?
I'm just not set up in production for them. But Chele can always add those in later. But I have a lot of broadleaf wildflowers here.
What is a broadleaf?
It's anything that's not a grass, basically. I'm thinking we plan out one bed and repeat it.
Even if you plant all 4 beds identical, are they all gonna look really different?
Oh yeah, they're gonna look different because there are going to be those micro pockets of like different soils and different amounts of light across all of her beds. And so plants are gonna fill out differently and because they have different genetics.
And you can see what happens with the shade.
Yep.
And then once this is gone, until that shows up, the afternoon is really shady. But
Yeah.
that should matter because they're prairie plants.
Can prairie plants really withstand anything?
No, they can't withstand anything because the truth of the matter is they need clay soils and they need good sunlight and they need droughty conditions so that they don't die. So even though we think of them as low maintenance because they can tolerate those 3 things, doesn't mean that they can tolerate the opposite of those 3 things. But you've definitely got quite a bit of sun that they'll love. Now, if at any point you're noticing things filling out at a rate you're not comfortable with, feel free to like rip it out, you know, because it's native. Some of these that are maybe even going to be a little bit faster establishing, you're welcome to move, mix, match, prune, you know, get in there and work on it. We could space them out decently well now, and if you get like 2 years in and you're like, I need more.
I know how to find you.
Yeah, you do know how to find me.
In the prairie, everything already feels really tight to me, or looks really tight. And so, is that something that should be replicated or not in this flower bed?
So prairie plants are not the kind of plant like you traditionally think of where you need to allow it the space to grow. There's no allowance here. Prairie plants just take what they want. They take the space they want. And so really, the closer you plant your prairie plants, the faster they're gonna be able to choke out any weeds. So there's actually a lot of benefit to planting them tighter rather than too far apart. However, it does cost more when you plant plants tighter together because it takes more plants to fill in. So there's definitely pros and cons. How are you feeling about our placement so far?
I'm feeling good.
Okay. We are going to walk through some planting. And I think we're going to do the liatris since I know it's your favorite. Why is it your favorite native?
I was so excited when I found out it was a native because we didn't, in the florist world back in the 1900s, when some more exotic things started coming in past carnations and roses.
Yeah.
It was just one of my favorites to stick in an arrangement because that color of purple is actually like a neutral. You can put it with anything and it just brightens it. And the line that you can get with it.
I know, there's nothing like
So I came at
them.
it from a florist perspective. And then when I found out it was just growing out in Kansas, it's like, what?
I know.
This is awesome.
There's a lot of natives that have made their way into the cultivated floristry world. And I always am really proud of the fact that a lot of our perennials come from our prairie. And so it boggles my mind that people would want to go and get like other types of perennials that aren't native to our prairie because it's like everybody covets the Kansas prairie except for Kansans.
Well, that's the way it goes.
Isn't that nuts? So your soil here, I'm looking at it, is actually quite loose. Found out later it's because the landscape crew hauled in that soil. Did you have to take soils?
Nope. Closest I got was crop science.
So you didn't have to learn how to do the little ribbon test where you like mounded the clay in your hand and then you tried to pinch it between your thumb and your forefinger to make it like into a long ribbon?
Not at all. No, I'm a communications. I don't have to take soils.
Well, now you know how to test for clay soils. You're welcome.
Thanks, Renata.
And if it holds a nice ribbony shape, like you see that?
Yeah.
How it can kind of, then you know you're working more with clay soils than with like a loamy or a sand soil. It's a quick test to see how clay your soils are. So it's still pretty clay, which actually in this case I'm relieved because that's what these like to grow in, which is so crazy because everyone's like, the first thing people talk to me about when they're talking about establishing a planting, they're like, oh, my soils are so hard. They're full of clay. They're so poor. I don't think I can grow anything there. Well, if clay exists, plants exist that can grow in it. You just got to select correctly. So natives are the way to go here, prairie natives. I'm trying to be specific about prairie natives because, you know, Colorado spruces are native places, just not here.
Are there plants that do struggle to grow in clay soils?
Any plant that has a really fine fibrous root system is going to struggle more with our clays. These prairie natives have strong, girthy tap roots.
Good sharp tools are
Right.
great and helpful. And I'm going to demo this.
Awesome little.
I know. I
is it a
love my
shovel or
Dutch
is
tools.
it a spade?
It's a spade. I've got a nice sharp edge on it. Make sure that my tools are sharp so it doesn't kill my back.
We've talked selection, selection, selection. Are there selections that still need to be made when we're choosing our tools?
Definitely. So many people don't realize that when you buy a shovel, it doesn't actually have a sharp edge put on it. And you have to actually sharpen the edge of your shovel so that you can dig into these tough clays.
So I'm going to dig a hole. You want to dig to the depth of the root ball.
What if we don't dig to the depth of the root ball?
Well, if you dig too deep, then you've got to backfill with loose soil, and with clays, they shrink and swell, and so what will happen is your plant will sink deeper because you've loosened all that soil underneath the root ball. But if you plant it too high, if you don't dig that hole deep enough, then you risk that potting medium that those plants are in their pots being exposed to wind, and that wind can wick away the moisture from directly around the roots, and they're going to die real quick.
And Liatris actually forms a geophytic structure. Do you know what a geophyte is?
No, I do not.
So geo meaning earth and phyte is plants. So geophyte just means a plant that has a storage structure below the earth. So like tulips are a geophyte. Liatris is a geophyte. And geophytes are awesome because they're usually pretty drought tolerant. They store extra nutrients and water below ground, so if we go through really serious drought years, they're gonna make it through. So anyways, I'm planting it in level with, where the stems are coming out. I'm sure you've done many a planting in your year.
Plant identification is not my top trait by any means. I will think a weed is a plant that is supposed to be there. And so in this planting process, you tell her something that I think is very crucial and would be important to me. And what is that?
You got to mark your plants. You got to label them.
You may consider putting some stakes in where you've done plantings so you know where to watch for things coming back. Because, for instance, that amorpha, that lead plant, is going to be the last thing to come up out of the ground every spring. It might not even be until May that you start to see it shaking dormancy.
What is dormancy?
Dormancy is when a plant ceases active growth, and more than that, it actually pulls in a lot of its nutrients down into its roots.
I always tell people, ideally, you don't plant perennials until the ground's warmed up enough that everything's had the opportunity to shake dormancy. We've been trained to everybody go and buy plants at the garden center in, like April, as soon as the last average frost hits. And that's just not the way gardening should be naturally.
How long can people plant then?
You can plant as long as the ground is warm enough to plant.
So how about you do the watering? This is something that I can coach you through.
Okay.
So get some pressure going. There you go. And the layover when you water, they're new plantings, they're tall.
You're going to tell me when to stop,
crispy.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So with clays, it's really important when you do the watering practice to do a very thorough soaking and maybe even go move areas, water that, and then come back and check to make sure that it's soaked in, and then maybe even go for a second round.
Can you visually see that soaked in?
At least when you're watering in for the first time, it is a good idea to inspect a little closer to make sure that that water really is going down into the root ball.
I'm going to try to stick to the watering rule.
What are the watering rules?
So in the Wichita area, a lot of these towns that are on Wichita water are under water restrictions because last summer we had a huge drought scare where the water source for the city of Wichita was really, really low. And so everyone has water restrictions. They're only allowed certain days to water.
Yeah.
Stick to 3 times a week?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So
Okay.
that's why saturating your soil when you water is important.
It's also why planting prairie plants is a very wise idea.
Because they take less water.
Yeah, definitely take less water than shrimpy little annual bedding plants that have root systems that are like 4 inches deep.
They need less water because their roots go deeper and can tap into wetter soils down below.
Yeah, I guess.
Wouldn't that be the reason?
Yep, it depends on the root structure. So you've got like your geophytes that hold extra water in their roots. And then you've got plants like your Brackelia that have roots that are 17 feet deep. Those are definitely tapping into moisture at levels that plants at the surface are not. One of the reasons that we can't grow very much in clay soils is because they are so retentive. They hold on to a lot of moisture. And so plants end up dying from root decay because if we had more rain than we actually do, they would end up rotting. And so it's actually more natural and a better, more efficient way to water your plants to fully satiate them and then fully let them dry out over a longer period of time. So clay soils are water efficient soils. When you establish a native planting, there's kind of a stepped process in the first 3 years.
Okay.
In your first year, your natives, your job is going to be making sure their roots are tapping into your native soil. And I check on my natives about every 3 days over the summer, just by sticking my finger in the ground on a couple of them to see what the moisture level's like on those. And you will be able to see them wilting if they're feeling a little bit on the dry side in their first summer.
As they get more established and years older, do you not have to water them as often?
No, you definitely don't. Their roots are established and they're doing their thing. I mean, I'm not out there watering the prairie. So first year is getting their roots tapped into your native soil. The second year is all about making sure that what's coming up is coming up where you want it to come up.
What if it's not coming up where you want it coming up?
You gotta rip it out. Or you could move it where you want it to be. Weeding out anything that is a weed like crabgrass and clover and dandelions and things like that that had opportunity to fill in amongst your natives because they're just as aggressive as your natives. But you have to be willing to put in that initial effort in keeping the weeds at bay right at first.
Okay.
And that's why labeling is going to be so important, so you know what they look like. And I even encourage taking pictures of each individual one, because believe me, when it comes time next spring and things start popping out of the ground, it's going to be like, wait, is that a weed or is that something we planted? Think of it like a prairie.
I said I wanted to release control.
I know.
But then I was like, but you must bend to my will.
As both rule follower types of people, how do you go about just letting it take over?
I don't know. There's something that I feel like I can control what the prairie is within. And so I've redefined what I'm controlling. And so I can let them do whatever they want within a space. And then in the third year, they should be well established and they're starting to then bulk out.
Bulk out? Are there like stems gonna get bigger while they also spread across more?
You have to remember that these natives are going to die back to the ground every year. And so their stems above ground aren't necessarily getting bigger, but their root systems are. So it's more about their root systems bulking so that every year that they come back, they're going to be thicker and bigger and they're going to have a wider spread. Okay. So it is kind of a stair-step process. And so I think a lot of folks get the impression that when they plant a native, it's drought tolerant right off the bat, easy maintenance. But, you know, you got to push them through that first bit just to get them there, you know?
Okay.
If we're thinking about the prairie and the rain's their source of being watered, is it okay for them to deal with maybe a little bit of drought in their first year?
It depends on how big a drought we're talking here, because if you let your plants wilt and you leave them that way for a couple weeks, they're gonna die. But if you let them be wilted for like a day, not as big a deal. Do you have any concerns about that process?
I hate hoses.
When I asked Chele about what concerns she had, I would think she'd be worried more about the containment, because that's what most people worry about with natives. They always are talking about how aggressive they are. No, Chele was concerned about dragging a hose around her yard. I know. Well, sometimes, you know what I do? I get a hose out, but I'll set up a sprinkler and I'll set my timer for 15 minutes, set it there in the middle of the planting, and then I'll move my, one of those little dram sprinklers, and I'll just set it straight in the middle and it'll water an area, and then I'll move it in the next 15 minutes, and then within an hour you're done watering for the day.
For the sprinklers, there's so many different types. Is there a certain water pattern that's best?
Well, these are the kind of sprinklers that have a fountain from the center is what I'm talking about, and they only have like about a 10-foot spread. What's nice about these is you can water locally and really satiate one bed at a time. So what I'll do is I'll hook it to the end of the hose. I'll just kind of swing it into the center of the bed, and then I'll turn on the faucet and I'll move it periodically to get one bed at a time, rather than those sprinklers that are shooting out like 30 feet, you know. You don't want to water with those that close to the house. Now, you notice we didn't use fertilizer. Did you have any questions about that?
No.
I would assume that we don't.
Yeah, because poor soil they like their native soil. You only really have to amend soil when you're working with plants that aren't native to your native soil. So that's another beautiful part about native plantings, that you don't have to change yourself. It's like the ideal relationship, you know? You go into it with no changes expected, but you still have to put, some of that establishing commitment into it.
There's such thing as soil tests. So if someone's wanting to establish a native prairie bed, is there ever a reason they would need to soil test to begin with?
I'm never going to tell someone not to test their soils because it always helps to have more information about your soil.
So now that we've done the placing, we've done a practice planting, are you feeling ready to rock and roll?
I don't usually have this much to plant all at once. How long can they sit out here in pots if I water them every day?
You know what I would recommend doing, because we kind of placed these so that we knew we had enough space.
Yeah.
I would recommend starting with one bed, maybe moving these into flats.
Okay.
And then you can start with one at a time.
That
and
makes
go from
so
there.
much more sense.
I'm big into, when you're doing a planting of this size, phasing it.
Yeah, we got to phase it.
Phase it. Yep. Start with one layer and peel the onion back, because you're an at-home grower. It's not like you're a landscape crew.
If I had 75 plants being planted into my beds for my native prairie, I would think I'd be a little more concerned. Is she kind of nonchalant more than you thought she'd be?
I think she's a lot more flexible in her mindset than I thought she was going to be. I mean, I was just really impressed with how Chele just really went with the flow.
Are you anxious at all about the maintenance at all in the next 3 years, or the establishment process?
I would be if we were planning a big trip for this first summer, but I think if you told me that the watering schedule is good, one of the reasons this is here was because one of the options when we were looking at tearing out what was here was to put in lawn with more sprinklers, and that's what I did not want to do.
And let me tell you, natives are a whole lot more exciting to watch grow than lawns are. And when I asked Chele what she's most excited for, she had a really good answer.
I think the discovery that's going to come over the next few years, because I know you've told me what they are. I can keep looking them up, but when it actually happens, when each one blooms in its own season, it's so cool that there's going to be that change from early spring to late fall, and I'm not going to have to deadhead. That's the best part.
Yeah, in fact, you don't want a deadhead.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, you got to let those seeds be free.
I mean, petunias are beautiful, but damn.
We've talked a lot about, we walk out our front door, get to see the prairie. And so planting a native prairie flower bed is never something I would consider. However, I see the beauty of this. And so what are some key takeaways for people who are also thinking, maybe I want to bring some of the Flint Hills to my front yard?
It's important to remember that natives take maintenance in their first 1 to 3 years. It's not something that is an overnight gratification process. You need to be ready for that. And you also need to be ready to shift your mindset, because natives do not grow at all like your box store garden center petunias. So it's really important to reframe your mind as well. And those are really the two things you need to remember. The rest, just listen to the rest of the podcast. You'll get it.
If people are going to find more information from the Plant Plus Lady, how can they do that?
They can subscribe to my YouTube channel or check out my Substack account, because both of those places are excellent locations to learn more about all kinds of plants, or simply to see bonus visual content from this episode.